Tonight, we leave the modern world behind for the quiet of the Middle Ages. Close your eyes and listen. Backslash and you are back in time, safe and warm. Let the story begin. Backslash and you wake to the sound of rain, a slow and steady percussion on the shingles just above your palate, a sound as familiar as your own breathing. The air in the attic is thick with the smell of damp wool and the lingering smoke from last night's banked fire below. You do not rise immediately. You lie there, listening to the drops trace their patient paths down the small, thick window pane, their journey a meandering one, gathering weight, hesitating, then finally plunging out of sight. The world is quiet, save for this liquid whisper. You count the beats between the heavier drops that fall from the clogged gutter 1, 2, 3, 4, until the rhythm blurs into a single, ceaseless exhalation. Your blanket is rough against your chin, the linen worn soft in some places, stubbornly coarse in others. You feel the ache in your shoulders before you move, a deep, settled burn, a memory held in the muscle. You descend the narrow stairs, your hand trailing along the smooth, cold grain of the wooden railing, each knot and whorl a known landmark in the dimness. The main room is a cavern of shadows, the hearth a mound of gray ash. The smell here is different. Old tallow, dried herbs hanging in bunches from the beams, and beneath it all, the damp, mineral scent of the packed earth floor. Your task, the first of many, is to rebuild the fire. You kneel on the hard, cool ground, taking the iron poker from its hook. You scrape the ashes into a small bronze pan, the metal scraping with a dry, grating song. You lay the new tinder twigs of birch bark that curl like parchment, dry moss that crumbles to dust between your fingers, in a small, careful nest. You blow upon it, a long, steady breath that makes the nascent embers glow a timid orange, and you watch, unmoving, as a single, fragile flame licks upward, tasting the air. You feed it slender sticks, then one split log, the bark rough and damp under your palms. The heat begins to radiate, a gentle wave against your face, the only movement in the still room. The courtyard awaits, a rectangle of churned earth the color of old bread. The rain has softened it, and your first step sinks in slightly, the cold, gritty mud seeping over the edge of your thin shoe. The practice swords, the wasters, lean against the wet stone wall. They are not elegant things. They are heavy, blunt clubs of oak, darkened by sweat and grime, their grips worn smooth in specific places by other hands, other apprentices now gone. You lift one. The weight is immediate, a dull pull that begins in your wrist and travels up your arm to settle in the cradle of your shoulder socket. The grip is cold and slightly tacky from yesterday's rain. You take your place in the center of the yard, your feet finding the shallow depressions you have carved over weeks of repetition. The master is there, in the doorway. You do not look at him. You hear him sip from his tankard, the faint, sour scent of morning ale carried on the damp breeze. You raise the waster. The movement is not swift. It is a slow, deliberate arc, your muscles protesting the familiar path. Up until the rough oak taps your shoulder with a soft, reassuring thud. Then forward, in a slow, pushing cut that ends with your arm fully extended, the point aiming at a knot in the wooden fence across the yard. You hold it there. The burn begins in your deltoid, a warmth that deepens into a precise, aching tremor. You breathe in through your nose, the air cold and smelling of wet soil and distant wood smoke. You breathe out through your mouth, a white cloud that hangs for a moment before dissolving. You lower the sword, the descent just as slow, feeling the different strands of muscle engage to guide the weight back to your side. Then you raise it again. Up. Thud. Forward. Hold. The rhythm is as monotonous as the rain, a physical chant. Your palms, wrapped in strips of linen, begin to grow hot. A blister from yesterday, broken and weeping, sticks to the cloth, a tiny, persistent pang with every shift of your grip. Time passes, measured not in minutes but in repetitions, in the gradual warming of the air as the sun struggles behind the uniform gray sky, in the slow evaporation of moisture from the fence posts, leaving them darker in patches. Your world narrows to the sweep of the grain in the oak before your eyes, to the crunch of grit under your own shifting feet, to the symphony of small aches singing from your shoulders, your back, your legs. The master-esque corrections are grunts, points of a staff tapping your elbow to adjust its angle, nudging your back foot a half-inch to the left. The touch is impersonal, a slight pressure through your tunic, followed by the smell of wool and ale as he moves away. You correct yourself. Up. Thud. Forward. Hold. The movement becomes a meditation, a emptying of thought. There is no enemy, no flash of steel, only the weight and the arc and the slow, burning fatigue that seeps into your bones, making them feel both heavy and hollow. When the session ends, it ends without ceremony. The master simply takes the waster from your numb hand, and the sudden absence of weight is a strange, floating sensation. Your arms feel like smoke. Your next task is waiting on a worn bench. A real sword, its blade mottled with a reddish-brown bloom of rust, a stone, a bucket of sand, and a small, pungent jar. You sit on the cold bench, the damp wood leaching through your trousers. You take the blade across your lap. The metal is cold, even through the linen wrappings on your hands. You dip a rag into the jar. The sharp, ammoniac sting of urine fills your nose, clearing the last of the ale scent from your senses. You dampen the sand with it, creating a gritty paste. Then, with the flat of the whetstone, you begin to rub. The motion is a small, circular one, your wrist pivoting, your fingers applying a steady, gentle pressure. The sound is a soft, sandy hiss, rhythmic and endless. You watch the rust dissolve under the paste, revealing the dull gray steel beneath, inch by patient inch. The metallic tang mixes with the other smells, a clean mineral note. You rub, and you rub, and you rub. Your mind is as still as the puddle in the corner of the yard, reflecting the blank sky. You are here, grinding the rust away. The world is quiet. Your shoulders burn, safe and warm with the familiar fire of use. You rub, and you rub, and you rub. The coolness of the pre-dawn air, thin and sharp, always found its way beneath the coarse wool of your tunic, raising a faint tremor across the surface of your skin as you stepped barefoot onto the packed earth of the courtyard. The ground, still damp from the night's unseen dew, yielded ever so slightly beneath the calloused pads of your feet, a gentle, cool press that seeped upward, silencing the faint ache that lingered in your arches from the previous day's relentless practice. Overhead, the sky was a bruised plum, slowly leaching its deep purples into a muted gray. And from beyond the low stone walls, you could just perceive the distant, sleepy murmurs of the city beginning to stir. A solitary, far-off cartwheel creaking with a slow, deliberate groan. The faint, tinny clang of a bell from a faraway church tower. A sound that seemed to stretch and dissipate into the heavy, still air before it could truly register. The world was quiet. You reached for the familiar heft of a waster, your fingers wrapping around the worn leather grip, rough and slightly slick with the accumulated oils of countless sweaty palms. The wood, heavy and unyielding, settled into your grasp with a comforting weight, a solid, dependable presence that would soon become an extension of your own weary arm. Your master, a hulking silhouette against the paling eastern sky, already stood at the far end of the narrow yard, his broad shoulders hunched, and a low, guttural hum, thick with the lingering scent of last night's air, rumbled deep within his chest as he adjusted the leather strap of his own heavy practice sword. The air was a crisp, living thing, smelling of damp stone, and the faint, sweet ghost of wood smoke drifting from the kitchen chimneys. It clung to the skin like a cool silk veil, carrying the promise of a clear autumn day. As the first true light began to bleed through the indigo hem of the horizon, the courtyard seemed to hold its breath. Every cobblestone, worn smooth by generations of boots, was slick with a fine silver dew that shimmered like crushed pearls in the gloaming. The man at the end of the yard, whom the village knew simply as Master Thorn, moved with a slow, deliberate grace that belied his massive frame. He didn't speak. Words were heavy things at this hour, better left for the heat of the afternoon. Instead, he shifted his weight, his boots making a soft, rhythmic scritch against the grate. The sound was comforting, a steady heartbeat for the waking world. The protagonist watched the way the light caught the edge of Thorn-esque practice blade. A dull, heavy length of ash wood bound in iron. It wasn't a weapon of war, but a tool of patience. As Thorn began a slow-motion arc, the wood sliced through the mist with a low, hollow whistle. It was a sound that settled deep in the marrow, rhythmic and hypnotic. High above, in the crevices of the keep-esque gray granite walls, the swifts began to stir. Their soft twittering was the only music the morning required. They darted from their nests, dark crescents against the lavender sky, weaving through the rising warmth of the chimney breath. The castle was slowly exhaling its nighttime chill, the great stones releasing the cold they had gathered. Zor. Their soft twittering was the only music the morning required. They darted from their nests, dark crescents against the lavender sky, weaving through the rising warmth of the chimney breath. The swallows knew every draft and eddy of air around the castle's heights, riding invisible currents with effortless grace. Below their aerial dance, the kitchen garden was emerging from shadow. Dew clung to every leaf and petal, transforming ordinary herbs into jeweled treasures. Each droplet held a tiny reflection of the awakening sky miniature worlds of pink and gold, suspended on sage leaves and thyme stems. A spider's web stretched between two rosemary bushes had become a net of diamonds, trembling slightly as the first warmth touched its delicate architecture. The head gardener's cat, a tabby named Cinders, picked her way along the garden path with careful deliberation. Her paws left dark prints in the silver dew, a temporary record of her morning patrol. She paused beside a patch of chamomile, settling onto sun-warmed stone that still remembered yesterday's heat. Her purring joined the swallows' songs, a deeper counterpoint to their bright notes. In the castle's lower bailey, the well stood silent and patient. Its stone rim was smooth from centuries of hands and rope, worn into gentle curves like river rocks. The water far below reflected the brightening sky, a circle of heaven brought down to earth. Soon the bucket would descend and rise again, but for now the well simply held its treasure of cold, sweet water, dark and still and perfect. The laundry courtyard beside the well was already touched by sunlight. Clotheslines stretched between posts, empty now but ready for the day's work. A forgotten linen cloth hung from one line, dried stiff by yesterday's sun and night's cool air. It moved slightly in the morning breeze, a gentle flapping like distant applause for the arriving day. Beyond the courtyard wall, the orchard was awakening in layers. The topmost branches of the apple trees caught the light first, their leaves turning from gray to green as illumination found them. The transformation moved downward like a slow tide, branch by branch, until even the lowest boughs were gilded. Between the trees, the grass grew thick and wild, scattered with early windfall apples that had ripened and fallen in the night. Their sweet, cidery scent rose with the warming air. A hedgehog emerged from beneath, a pile of pruned branches stacked against the orchard wall. It had spent the night hunting beetles and slugs, and now sought its daytime shelter. The creature's small, dark eyes blinked against the growing light as it trundled across the grass, leaving a wandering trail through the dew. It disappeared into a hollow beneath an ancient pear tree, settling into the dry leaves gathered there, safe and hidden. The castle's sundial stood in a corner of the herb garden, its bronze gnomon beginning to cast its first true shadow of the day. You rise before the sun, your body aching from the day before, the memory of the waster's impact still fresh in your muscles. The world is quiet, the air cool and damp as you pull on your tunic, the rough fabric brushing against the blisters on your palms. The scent of damp earth and old wood fills your nostrils as you step into the courtyard, the packed dirt ground yielding slightly under your bare feet. The master's house looms behind you, its thatched roof shrouded in the pre-dawn mist, the distant sound of chickens clucking softly in their coop. The wasters lie in a neat row against the wall, their blunt edges dull in the dim light. You pick up the first one, the weight familiar in your hands, the leather grip cool against your blistered skin. The master's voice barks from the doorway, his breath sharp with the scent of ale. Again. And again. Until you forget your own name. You nod, your throat too parched to speak, and you begin. The rhythmic clanging of waster on waster fills the courtyard, the sound steady and unchanging. The master's voice is a constant drone in the background, his corrections sharp and unwavering. Your shoulders burn, the muscles protesting as you raise and lower the waster, the motion repetitive and unyielding. The sun rises slowly, the light creeping across the courtyard, warming the packed dirt ground, the heat seeping into your bare feet. The master's house casts a long shadow, the morning light glinting off the thatched roof. The chickens cluck softly in their coop, the sound a gentle counterpoint to the clanging of the wasters. The scent of the master's ale breath lingers in the air, mingling with the earthy smell of the courtyard. Your arms ache, the muscles trembling with the effort, but you do not stop. The master's voice is a steady drumbeat, guiding you through the drills, his words a lullaby of instruction. You pause for a moment, your breath ragged, the waster heavy in your hands. The master's house stands silent and still behind you, the thatched roof casting a shadow over the courtyard. The chickens have fallen quiet, the only sound the distant hum of the city waking up. You wipe the sweat from your brow, the salt stinging the blisters on your palms. The master's voice is a soft murmur, his words a gentle reminder. Rest is for the dead. Keep going. You resume the drills, the waster an extension of your arm, the motion smooth and unbroken. The sun climbs higher, the heat intensifying, the packed dirt ground radiating warmth. The scent of your own sweat mingles with the earthy smell of the courtyard, the metallic tang of the wasters, a constant reminder of the task at hand. The master's voice is a steady presence, his words a comforting rhythm, guiding you through the endless cycle of drills. The day wears on, the sun reaching its zenith, the heat oppressive. Your arms tremble, the muscles screaming in protest, but you do not stop. The master's voice is a soft murmur, his words a gentle reminder. Only the strong survive. Keep going. The courtyard is a blur of motion, the wasters a constant clang, the master's voice a steady drumbeat. As the sun begins to set, the light fading, the courtyard cooling, you finally lower the waster, your arms trembling, your breath ragged. The master's house stands silent and still, the thatched roof bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The chickens have long since fallen silent, the only sound the distant hum of the city winding down. The master's voice is a soft murmur, his words a gentle reminder. Well done. Tomorrow, we begin again. You lean the waster against the wall, the weight of familiar comfort in your hands. The leather grip is warm and smooth, the blisters on your palms a constant reminder of the day's labor. The master's house stands safe and warm behind you, the scent of ale and old wood a comforting presence. The world is quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of the wind through the thatched roof. You walk to the back of the courtyard, where a pile of real blades awaits. The scent of rust and urine fills your nostrils as you pick up the first sword, the metallic tang sharp and biting. You dip the blade into the bucket of sand and urine, the gritty mixture rough against your blistered palms. The rhythmic scraping of the sand against the blade fills the courtyard, the sound steady and unchanging. The master's house stands silent and still, the thatched roof shrouded in the gathering dusk. The blades are a mix of sizes and shapes, each one with its own unique history. You work methodically, the motion repetitive and soothing. The scent of rust and urine is a constant presence, the metallic tang a sharp contrast to the earthy smell of the courtyard. The master's voice is a soft murmur in the background, his words a gentle reminder. A well-maintained blade is a loyal companion. As the last light fades, the courtyard bathed in the soft glow of the moon, you finally finish the last blade. The pile of swords gleams dully in the moonlight, the rust and grime replaced by a dull shine. The master's house stands silent and still, the thatched roof shrouded in the darkness. The world is quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of the wind through the leaves. You walk back to the house. The scent of ale and old wood a comforting presence. The master's voice is a soft murmur, his words a gentle reminder. You've done well. Rest now. Tomorrow, we begin again. You nod, your body aching, your palms blistered and raw. The master's house stands safe and warm, the thatched roof a comforting shelter from the night. You climb the stairs to the loft, the wooden steps creaking under your weight. The scent of straw and old wood fills your nostrils, the soft rustle of the chickens below a gentle lullaby. You lie down on the pallet, the rough fabric brushing against your blistered palms. The world is quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of the wind through the thatched roof. You close your eyes, the exhaustion a comforting weight, and you drift off to sleep, the distant dream of earning a penny as a hired sword a fleeting thought in the back of your mind. The master's house stands safe and warm, the night quiet and still. Tomorrow, you will begin again. The pale, tentative light of pre-dawn would often seep through the small, unglassed opening high on the wall, touching first the rough, woven texture of your scratchy wool blanket before it found the closed lids of your eyes, stirring you gently from a shallow sleep that offered little true rest. You would feel the cool, damp breath of the early morning air tracing invisible patterns on your exposed skin, a shiver quietly asserting itself as you slowly became aware of the insistent chill that permeated the small, cramped room, and you would hear the faint, distant sounds of London beginning its slow, creaking awakening. Perhaps the rumble of a cart on cobblestones far away, or the muffled, deliberate clang of a blacksmith's hammer, each sound a soft, comforting reassurance that the world continued its monotonous turning. A subtle, earthy scent, mingled with the ghost of yesterday's hearth fire, would cling to the air, a familiar aroma that felt as old and immutable as the very stones of the house, grounding you in the quiet, unchanging routine that awaited. Your stiff limbs would respond with a slow, deliberate reluctance, protesting silently against the day's inevitable demands as you pushed yourself upwards from the rough straw pallet, feeling the stiff joints crackle softly in the quiet air. Stepping out into the packed dirt courtyard, the crisp morning air would immediately bite at your exposed hands, a stark contrast to the fleeting warmth of your sleeping nook, and you would instinctively rub your palms together, feeling the coarse texture of the calluses that had become a permanent part of your skin. The earth beneath your worn boots felt cool and yielding, retaining the night's dampness, and you could discern the faint, specific smell of wet soil mingling with the ever-present undercurrent of wood smoke drifting from neighboring chimneys, creating a particular olfactory tapestry that spoke of early mornings and hard, unyielding work in this quiet, enclosed space. You would reach for a waster, one of the heavy, blunt practice swords carved from solid oak, its surface smooth and worn from countless hands and endless repetitions, feeling its substantial, comforting weight settle into your grip, a familiar extension of your own weary arm. The first slow, deliberate movements of the drill would begin. A simple block, then a parry, then a thrust. The dull thud of wood meeting would a low, rhythmic punctuation in the stillness of the courtyard, each sound echoing slightly in the confined space. Your breath, initially shallow, would slowly deepen into a soft, rhythmic huff-huff, a quiet counterpoint to the distant, rising murmur of the city as it stretched and yawned. And you would feel the subtle friction of your worn leather breeches against your legs with each careful step. A constant, gentle reminder of your own physical presence within this unfolding, monotonous day. The master, a stout man whose rough tunic often carried the faint, sharp tang of stale ale, would move with a heavy, deliberate grace around the edges of your practice. His low, guttural rumbles of correction serving as a constant, non-verbal soundtrack to your efforts. Their meaning conveyed not through words, but through the sheer weight and tone of his breath. You would feel the subtle vibration of his heavy boots against the packed earth long before he was directly beside you, a deep resonance that traveled up through the soles of your own feet. And the close proximity of his presence would carry the strong, almost acrid scent of ale and old leather, a particular smell that had become synonymous with instruction and expectation. His sharp intake of breath, a distinct sound in the quiet air, would often signal an imperfection in your form, a subtle, almost imperceptible critique that you had learned to interpret with the precise instinct of a seasoned craftsman. As the sun climbed higher, casting longer, sharper shadows across the courtyard, a deep, insistent ache would begin to spread through your shoulders, a dull warmth that slowly intensified with each repeated swing and block, a constant, predictable companion to your endeavors. You would feel the first sharp sting of a forming blister on your palm, a tender spot where the wood of the waster had rubbed raw against your skin, and the slickness of sweat would soon coat the leather grip, making your hold both firm and precarious. Your own labored breathing would grow louder, a steady, rhythmic gasp for air that filled the space immediately around you, and a faint, almost metallic tang would begin to register at the back of your mouth, a subtle taste of exertion and fatigue that marked the passage of another hour spent in the relentless pursuit of form and function. Later, as the sun hovered near its zenith, casting an almost blinding glare across the dust motes dancing in the air, you would exchange the heavy waster for a real blade, its cold, unyielding steel a stark contrast to the warm, fibrous wood you had wielded. The quiet rustle of straw from a nearby stable, where a horse occasionally shifted its weight, would provide a momentary auditory diversion, a gentle, almost pastoral sound in the midst of your daily grind. You would then retrieve the coarse, gritty sand from its canvas pouch, feeling the individual grains shift and settle between your fingers, and the small, earthenware pot holding stale urine, its distinct, pungent aroma already beginning to assert itself in the still, warm air, signaling a different, yet equally monotonous, task. With a methodical, almost meditative focus, you would begin the slow, arduous process of grinding rust from the blade, feeling the coarse texture of the sand beneath your fingertips as you worked it into the dark, pitted surface of the steel. The surprising warmth of the blade would develop as you moved it with careful, circular motions against the abrasive grit, a subtle heat generated by the friction of your tireless labor. A sharp, almost acrid metallic tang would begin to fill your nostrils, a pervasive scent that mingled with the faint ammonia of the urine, creating a unique, almost industrial aroma that clung to your clothes and hair. The steady, rasping shhh sound of steel against grit, a low, consistent murmur, would become the dominant auditory feature of your immediate world, accompanied by the visible appearance of a fine, almost invisible metallic dust settling gently on the rough fabric of your tunic, a silent testament to the slow, painstaking work you performed. Hours would pass in this singular, repetitive task, your gaze fixed on the slow, almost imperceptible disappearance of the rust, replaced by the clean, glinting surface of the steel, a testament to your quiet persistence. You would feel the persistent vibration traveling from the blade through your hand, a subtle tremor that became a part of your own weary rhythm, and the way the shifting light caught the newly exposed, cleaner metal, revealing its dull sheen beneath the layer of corrosion, would serve as your only measure of progress. The subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the sound of the grind, a slightly smoother shhh as the rust gave way to bare metal, would be another quiet indicator of time's slow passage, while the pervasive metallic scent in the air, a constant companion, would leave a faint dryness in your throat, requiring you to swallow often, the world quiet and safe around you. As the sun dipped lower, painting the western sky with muted hues of orange and gray, a cool, gentle air would begin to descend, wrapping around your tired body, signaling the day's slow, deliberate end. The comforting aroma of wood smoke from the master's hearth, a warmer, richer scent than the morning's embers, would begin to drift into the courtyard, promising the simple, anticipated reward of the evening meal. You would feel the smooth, warm wood of the bowl in your hands, a pleasant contrast to the cold steel you had handled all day, and the thin, bland taste of the pottage, a simple gruel of oats and water, would offer a quiet, nourishing comfort as you slowly ate, hearing the soft, rhythmic clinking of spoons from inside the master's house, a sound of domestic peace. Finally, as deep shadows swallowed the courtyard and the last vestiges of daylight faded, you would retreat to your pallet, feeling the rough texture of the straw beneath your weary body, its familiar prickle a quiet, grounding sensation. The faint, persistent scratching of mice in the walls, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, would become part of the background hum of the quiet night, blending with the distant, muffled sounds of London settling into its slumber. The lingering scent of metal and sweat on your skin, a testament to the day's labor, would slowly dissipate, replaced by the cool, clean air of the night, and the quiet, persistent throb in your weary muscles would gradually soften, easing you towards a deep, dreamless sleep. The world is quiet now, and you are safe and warm. You stand in the packed dirt courtyard, the morning air cool and damp against your skin, the smell of wet earth and the distant, constant reek of the Thames settling around you like a warm cloak. Your hands, already marked from days prior, find the leather-wrapped grip of the waster, the wood grain rough and solid under your split palms. You raise the heavy, blunt sword. The movement of familiar ache that begins in the wrist travels up the forearm and settles as a dull burn deep within the muscle of your shoulder. The Master S shadow falls across the dirt, long and silent, and you begin the drill without a word being spoken. Your feet shift, a slow scrape against the grit, your breath a faint cloud in the air. The only sound the steady, rhythmic swish of the practice blade cutting nothing over and over, a metronome for the empty sky. Your world narrows to the repetition. Lift, turn, step, cut. Lift, turn, step, cut. The blisters on your right palm leave a clear fluid that pools in the air before sticking fast to the metal. A slight tug with every minute adjustment of your grip. The sensation is a distant, persistent fact, like the call of a far-off gull or the faint, ammoniacal sting from the bucket of sand and urine by the wall, used for scouring rust. You do not think of the pain as pain, but as a process, a slow transformation of your body into something useful, like timber being planed or wheat being ground. Your shoulders burn, a deep and constant warmth that spreads into your neck, a familiar anchor that holds you to the earth, to this patch of dirt, to this endless, circling movement. The world is quiet, save for the swish and the scrape and the sound of your own breath, matching the Master S, which carries the faint, sour tang of morning ale from where he stands, watching. When the Master raises a single finger, you stop. The cessation of motion is itself a kind of action, a settling of the blood, a slow recognition of the courtyard as other details. You walk to the stone trough, the water cold and murky, and you submerge your hands. The cold is a shock that becomes a numbness, a peaceful nullification of the sting. You watch the faint, cloudy tendrils of dirt and sweat and blood dissipate in the water, a slow dispersion into nothing. You dry your hands on your tunic, the coarse wool scratching against the raw skin, a tactile reminder of the fabric as weave, each thread a story of shearing, carding, spinning, a process as long and monotonous as your dreams. You are safe and warm in your fatigue, a hollow vessel for routine. The afternoon is for maintenance, a seated task on a three-legged stool in the dim shed. You take the Master S old broadsword, its edge nicked and dull, its surface bloomed with a reddish-brown rust. The smell of the urine in the sand mixture is sharp and organic, a pungent note that fills the small space, mingling with the odor of old oil and wet stone. You dip the cloth, the liquid cold against your fingers, and begin to rub the blade in long, slow, circular motions. The rust yields grudgingly, a faint, gritty resistance that gives way to a smoother slide, the metal emerging in patches of dull gray. You breathe in the metallic sting, your eyes half closed, your entire being focused on the slow, circular pressure of your hand, the whisper of cloth on steel, the gradual revelation of the blade beneath the corrosion. It is a peaceful erasure, a patient uncovering. Outside, rain begins to fall on the thatch, a soft, pattering rhythm like distant drums, a sound that seeps into the shed and slows your hand further, until each circle feels like a single thought in a long, empty meditation. Later, you sit on the bench by the kitchen door, a bowl of pottage in your hands. The heat of the thick pottery seeps into your palms, a dry, earthy warmth. The pottage itself is a thin, gray broth, studded with bits of softened barley and turnip, releasing a meek steam that carries the scent of onion and hearth smoke. You eat slowly, your spoon scraping the bowl with a soft, regular click. You feel the warmth travel down your throat and settle in your stomach, a simple, spreading glow. You watch the rain drip from the eaves into a barrel, each drop striking the water-esque surface with a perfect, hollow clink, then another, and another, a slow and endless progression. The world is quiet and still. You watch the faint horizon beyond the courtyard wall, a smear of gray cloud and lighter gray sky, where the rooftops of London fade into a mist that promises nothing, demands nothing, simply exists as a distant, mute boundary. You return to the courtyard as dusk bleeds the color from the sky. You take up the waster once more, its weight a comforting finality. You do not drill now, but simply hold it, feeling the balance, or lack thereof. The way the heavy tip pulls your shoulder downward into a steady, aching stretch. You look at your hands in the failing light, the broken blisters, the ingrained dirt, the lines of your palms etched with grime. They are not a swordsman-esque hands yet, but they are no longer a boy-esque. They are hands that grind rust, that hold a bowl, that feel the grain of wood. The light continues to fade, from gray to purple to a deep blue, and the courtyard becomes a pool of shadows. The distant sounds of the city settle into a low, murmuring hum, a single note held for hours. You stand until your body gives out, not with a collapse, but with a slow, gentle yielding, a recognition that the day is done. You lean the waster against the wall, its outline merging with the dark. The dream of a plan, of a road, of a purpose is there, but it is as faint and distant as the horizon, a thought that stirs no excitement, only a vague, woolly contemplation, like watching embers fade in a hearth. You walk inside, the packed dirt soft under your worn shoes, and the door closes behind you with a quiet, final thud, leaving the courtyard to the rain and the deep, enveloping night. Eyes on, a thought that stirs no excitement, only a vague, woolly contemplation, like watching embers fade in a hearth. You walk inside, the packed dirt soft under your worn,